Hello. All right. Good morning. All right. I'm still recovering from that Super Bowl game. Good game, but not as exciting as the stuff we're going to see tonight. Okay, so prepare yourselves. Here we go. So UST inspections. This is going to be a general overview, kind of a basic entry inspection guideline for you guys to take a look at. For a more detailed orientated inspection, I'm going to point you to Ms. Herrera's presentation for tomorrow. She gives a very detailed and very thorough inspection. This is a basic general overview. All right, so what's the importance here? The importance is that we're going to protect the waters of the state. You know, that's our main job. That's our main goal. It's a very, very important job that we have as regulators. And what gives us the authority to do that? It's going to be CCR Title 23. That's going to give us that authority to do so. And we're protecting the waters from the state, or excuse me, the waters from the state from any discharges of hazardous substances from these UST systems, these underground storage tanks. And in most parts, these are as we've seen, you know, retail facilities. It's gasoline, diesel, sometimes even waste oil. Okay, so why do we inspect? You know, basically, the Health and Safety Code is going to require that UST facilities be inspected. How often? Does anyone know? Once a year, right? We're out there once a year. We're out there doing the inspections annually. Okay, so we're out there just once a year to basically audit the entire, station. And we're there to verify, you know, the monitoring system, the components, the sensors. We do a paperwork inspection as well. And at the end of it all, we write up a report. So that's the basic outline that we basically go through. And we're going to conduct these inspections to make sure that UST facility is in compliance. Again, in compliance with what? Code of Regulations, Title 23. And Health and Safety Code, of course, 6.7. Those are the two things that we want to make sure that the facility is in compliance with. All right, so quick question for you guys. So how many San Diego County inspectors does it take to inspect a retail UST gas station? There you go. No, close. You can see basically 4, right here, and that's just how we do it in San Diego. We got the resource. No, just kidding. It's not 4. It's one. It's usually one inspector. Here it was just a training exercise, and you can basically see 1, 2, 3, 4 inspectors on different sumps. The lids have been opened, and they're basically verifying. In this instance, certain sensors might shut down the pumps in these sumps. And that's what they're doing. We verify the vibration of these turbines, meaning that when the sensors dipped in a liquid, it should cause a shutdown. And we can feel the vibrations, and that's what everybody's doing here. They're kind of relaxing and have a good time, on the sumps. So what does an annual UST inspection entail? Well, it entails a complete inspection report or records review, meaning that we're going to take a look at documentation. We're going to take a look at DO reports, designated operator reports. That's the person that comes out once a month, and basically they print out an alarm. They verify if any alarms have happened within that last month. They document them, and then we go out there once a year to verify and to ensure that those alarms were properly addressed. We're looking for DO training as well. They have to be trained annually, and we'll get into that later on. We're looking for financial responsibility, making sure that the facility is financially solvent. We're looking for certain forms. We're looking for UST forms. And we're also looking for permits as well. We want to make sure that they're current with their permits and their Hazardous Materials Business Plan, or HMBP, as well. We want to inspect that UST system, the containment. We want to make sure the hardware is in compliance with all the approved design and installation specifications, meaning that we don't want to see something that was homemade as a sensor in a UST sump, right? We want to make sure that everything's in compliance. It is approved. And again, we do inspect those UST systems. We want to check out those alarm histories, and we want to determine the overall condition of that station, meaning that we want to make sure that it is in compliance, that those alarms are addressed if there are alarms. We don't want to get there and see that there's been 20 alarms and nothing's been done, right? We want to make sure that those alarms are addressed if there are any. And basically, we're gonna take a look at the general site inspection, and we're gonna look for evidence of any spills, overfills, or leaks. obviously. I've been to a few sites where, there's some water in the sumps and it never triggered, and you open it up and it's like, doesn't the DO come out here once a month and do their job? And obviously they're not doing their job correctly, right? So that's something that we can check. We can verify with that. We just want to make sure that they're in compliance. If there's any releases, any spills, they are addressed. That's what we're doing there. That's what we're at there once a year, to verify and to make sure that the DO is doing their job, and then the feds verify that we're doing our job, and we get audited, right? Once in a while. So when we do our inspections, as an inspector, it's known as a hands-off inspection approach. Hands-off because I don't want to lift those heavy lids. They're pretty heavy, and I don't want to jump in those sumps and get those sensors, because those sumps are really deep. If you guys have ever seen those sumps, they're pretty deep. They're pretty dirty. The lids are heavy. Thank goodness for contractors, right? They're out there to help us. They're out there to assist us. So they help us lift the lids. They get the sensors for us, and they basically test everything while we're on site witnessing everything. So what we do is we make sure that all the access points are free and clear, meaning the lids are all taken off all the sumps. The dispenser pans are taken off the dispensers, or the UDCs, or dispensers, I should say. A dispenser, so we can basically see the sensor and we can see the bottom of those sumps. We want to make sure that those sumps are, in the most part, sensors at the lowest point. The sumps are relatively dry, relatively clean. If there's, a few gallons of water in there, the sensor's raised, we've got issues, right? So we just want to verify all these things are in compliance. And we're confirming functionality of all this leak detection equipment, all the sensors, the probes, to make sure that they work. So we go through the process of testing each one of the sensors, making sure that it is triggered in the monitoring panel. Usually it's the Veeder-Root TLS 350. We verify that inside to make sure that there is a printout. If it does cause shutdown, we do verify shutdown as well. And again, what we're doing here is we're witnessing the maintenance company conduct the annual monitoring system certification. So we're out there together. We're out there with contractors. We schedule these things once a year, just to make sure that we don't keep that facility closed for too long. Right? We don't want too much downtime for these gas stations, because they do lose a lot of money whenever they are closed down. And if we can contribute to them being economically viable, that's better than having them shut down twice a year for just our regulations. There's other inspections that go about, so we don't want to contribute to a downwards economic spiral. Not on me. Not in San Diego. So we usually work together. I don't know how it is in other counties. Do you guys work together with contractors as well? You guys do that? Okay, yeah. Less downtime. Makes it easier, right? Unless you want to lift lids, right? I don't. So we work together. So we also want easy access to inspect the UST system. We already talked about this: manways, the dispenser areas, and the equipment. Everything is going to be up there for us to test, to verify, and to make sure it works. And again, we're going to make sure that those sensors are working, that they're functional. All the sensors, the probes, the ATGs, the sump and UDC dispensers, all of them have to be functional. If something's non-functional, do we just walk away and have a good day? No, we make sure that it is retested and replaced as soon as possible. It's a violation. If something does fail, we mark it as a violation, and they've got a certain amount of time to get back to us and correct that violation. All right, real quick, I'm going to talk about SOCs, or significant operational compliance. Basically, what the purpose is of these SOCs is to assign a nationwide compliance with the federal program. And what they mean by significant is based on the federal requirements. So what this is entailing is tracking facilities with specific operational compliance in regards to release detection and release prevention. And all that's going to be reported to the State Water Resource Control Board by the CUPA. And all this is basically on LG 164, which lists all the criteria for these reporting requirements. Okay, so it's LG 164 that kind of lists everything here. What does that look like? Well, this is our form right here. This is San Diego's form. And you can see the highlighted areas. These are the criteria that we're talking about. The ones that have been highlighted for you in yellow are the release detection. And the ones that are highlighted in blue are the release prevention. So what they're looking for here, what the SOC is looking for is just facilities that are in compliance, okay? They want to make sure that they're in compliance with this regulation, or with this LG 116. Okay, in terms of operational requirements, we're basically going to be dealing with the requirements that are needed to own and operate a UST system. That's what we're going to be talking about here. And that's going to be found Title 23, Health and Safety Code 6.7. It's the two magic codes that we're dealing with the entire time. So, operating permit first. Okay, what do these operators / owners need to operate these facilities? Well, per 25284, in order to own or operate a UST, they need permits, right? Nothing's free. Everything, there's a price to everything, and we're the ones that are permitting these facilities. And they've got to be in compliance with these requirements, specifically subsection A1. And what that basically is saying is that in order to be issued that UST operating permit, they have to be in compliance with the laws and regulations of Health and Safety Code and Title 23. So again, if they're not in compliance, that facility will not be issued that UST operating permit. So they have to be in compliance, and we're the ones that are verifying the compliance, and we're the ones that are issuing that UST operating permit. So we do want to make sure that we're out there and we're ensuring that these facilities are in compliance, that their paperwork is in order, that their sensors are working before we issue these operating permits. We'll get packages whenever there's, let's say, a change of ownership, let's say, and we'll go out there and we'll verify and make sure that we have all the correct information, all the correct documentation. We've got the correct owners and operators on there, because if things go south, we know who to blame, right? We know who to go to. So we want to make sure that all this information is up to date, okay, and very current. So once all that is verified, we go ahead and issue that operating permit, and they're good to go. So when we're dealing with the owner-operator agreement, it's going to be a written statement between the owner of the tank and the operator of the tank. They can be one and the same. Sometimes it might be something like a franchisee. We have facilities like 7-Elevens, let's say, where you do have an owner, right? But the franchisee is the operator. So they're there doing the day-to-day operations. And what we verify in those instances is an owner-operator agreement, just to make sure that they're in compliance and they understand and they agree that they're going to monitor the tank system per the laws and regulations that we just talked about. And that they have read and have a copy of, the Health and Safety Code, specifically the code of 25299, which details what the requirements are for the owners / operators. And if there's a change within that owner / operator, we need to be notified. So let's say, this example of this 7-Eleven corporation who franchises out, that franchisee decides to, sell the business, or not sell the business, but quit, retire, go to the Bahamas, enjoy life. What's going to happen there is we're going to have a change of operator, so we need to be notified within a specific amount of time. 30 days is what we usually give for them to send in documentation or paperwork updating this owner-operator agreement. Okay, so financial responsibility. Basically, what we're dealing with here with financial responsibility is the fact that we want to make sure that these facilities are solvent, that they do have some money in the bank, and they're not, operating on nothing. And if there's a spill or release, they can't cover it. So that's what financial responsibility is there for. What they have to do, the owners and operators, is maintain evidence of that financial responsibility, meaning that they will take corrective action if necessary. If there's any, bodily injury, if there's any damage caused from a release, environmental damage, that's what we're looking for most commonly. That's what happens. And this can include, local governments and also federally recognized Indian tribes on Indian lands as well. So who are the only two people that do not, or only two, I'd say, agencies or or agencies, I'll say, that do not have to provide financial responsibility at all. You guys know? Yes, very good. Federal and state. Those are the two bodies that are exempt from any form of financial responsibility. So they don't have to prove to anyone that they have any money. So here's a more detailed look at that financial responsibility. So these owners and operators, they have to maintain evidence of the mechanisms that they use to show that they are financially solvent. And the way they show that is through what's called a certification of financial responsibility, or a CFR. And these are one of the forms or documentations that we actually take a look at when we're out there doing our annual inspection. We want to make sure that it's there for our inspection review. Again, we also have a copy of this sent to us, and we also keep one of these forms on file as well for our records review. And again, if there's any change in the mechanism that they were using for financial responsibility, they have to submit that paperwork to us. So anytime there's a change, we need to be notified. We'll go through the mechanisms, the different types of mechanisms, and I'll point out the ones that are most commonly seen on the retail side of things. Oh, there we go. So here we have a form of what the CFR looks like. This is the state form here. What you can see is the information that we're looking for is the state UST fund, which is the most common one that we see, in conjunction with the Chief Financial Officer letter, the CFO letter. So for most retail stations, I'd say upwards about 90%, 85-90%, you're going to see state UST fund and the CFO letter. Now the state is going to cover $995,000 of any potential release, and the CFO letter is going to cover the $5,000, if you guys can see that there. And again, we want to make sure we know the right person to blame if there is a release. I mean, the right person to notify, right? If there's a release. So we have the facility contact information, the facility name, all that information present as well. So again, this is the CFR, the Certificate of Financial Responsibility. That's the letter that has to be on file. We have a copy of that as well in our records. And then we also have, we talked earlier about what does this mean, the CFO? All right, the state covers $995,000, but what about the CFO? What does that look like? Well, here's a sample of what a CFO letter looks like. And my laser is dying. I guess I had a good time at the Super Bowl too. It's dead. So I can get some batteries for the laser pointer. That'd be awesome. So the CFO letter is going to entail certain information. This is the Chief Financial Officer letter. We want to see this updated annually. This is the one that has to be updated annually. The CFR letter that you see to the what is it, right? Your left, my right? Has to be on record, but the one that has to be updated annually and the one that needs to be verified annually is going to be the CFO letter. Okay, that's basically saying that they're still good for that $5,000 that they are initially claiming that they're good for. If there's a change in the mechanism, let's say it was a independent site and they were doing this, and now all of a sudden it's a big corporate site. So those big corporate sites have some money in the bank, a little bit of money in the bank, and what they can do is they actually have self-insurance or self-guaranteed, and they don't use the state fund at all. Oh, we came back. Awesome. State fund at all. So we'll see a variance of them, and we want to make sure that those policies are present, and we review them and we check them out just to make sure that they are documented appropriately. So here I want to list mechanisms. It's 2 slides of mechanisms, and I'm going to go over the ones that we most commonly see. There's some that I've never seen. I don't know if you guys have seen them. So if you guys have seen them, you guys can just raise your hand and say, I've seen this before, and here's how it goes. So what we usually see is, again, the state fund. Okay, it's a reimbursement program, like I said earlier, in conjunction with that CFO letter. Okay, that's the most common mechanism that we see. So if we go back here, this setup here is what we most commonly see in retail UST gas station facilities. Insurance, like I said, if it's a big corporation, they've got a little bit of money in the bank, they'll usually do the insurance themselves. So we've got liability insurance, you have an endorsement, and a copy of that insurance plan will be, or should be, on site for us to review, or made available for us to review and inspect. I've never seen this where you have the financial test. Oh, self-insurance. Yeah, I have seen this. Again, usually big corporations, and they only have to prove that they have a net worth of only $10 million. So it's not a big deal. So big corporations are going to have this as well. Letter of credit. This is the one I've never seen before, but it's a contract between three parties. The issuer, which would be the bank. The principal, which is the UST owner/operator, and then you've got the third party, which is the State Water Resource Control Board, and they're going to submit a copy of that to the Resource Control Board, and they're going to keep a copy on site as well for our inspection review. Trust fund, standby trust fund, surety bond. I haven't seen these. I don't know if you guys have seen these before at retail stations before. These aren't very common. I've never seen one in San Diego. None of our inspectors have seen them in San Diego. But there are a variety of different mechanisms, as you can see, that can be used. A guarantee, we sometimes see that as well. Again, usually it's going to be those bigger corporations that have these self-insured or guarantees on site, as opposed to the state fund and CFO letter. Okay, but again, CFO letter, state fund, that's the most common thing that we see out there in terms of financial responsibility. Okay, so when we're talking about third-party evaluations for these leak detection equipment, what that's saying is we're dealing with third-party certification that's going to be required for all the monitoring system components installed after '94. So all the equipment that we see that's on site, all the sensors, all the probes, all the leak detectors, or not the leak detectors, but the sensors, probes, ATGs, all those monitoring sensoring equipment have to be certified. They have to be reviewed for compliance with EPA's standards and requirements, and all that falls under LG 113. Okay, so the hard part has already been done for us, kind of, in the fact that we don't review the actual sensor. So when they pull, let's say, like a 208 sensor, that's one of the model names of one of the more common sensors that we see is a 208. We know that the 208 has been already reviewed by the third party to allow it to be in that sump, and the body that governs this is LG 113. So we use LG 113 to identify any California or manufacturer limitations for that leak detection equipment. So basically, what that means is that if it's not in LG 113, it can't go in the sump. Okay, it can't be in that UST system. So LG 113 is a very important guideline in terms of what's allowed to be in that UST system and what is not allowed to be in that UST system. So being on LG 113 is a good thing. It's like being invited to this after Super Bowl party, right? You're cool, you're in. If you're not LG 113, then you're not getting in. And for more information, you can you can see the link there. There's a few links if you guys look at the bottom of the presentations. There'll be some links that'll take you to the websites where you can find more information on these issues. All right, so pop quiz. So what's the main intent of the regulations? Yes, you guys are right. To protect those waters of the state. Very good. How? What do we do? What are the two things that we use, the two bodies of law that we use? We use Health and Safety Code. We use the California Code of Regulations, and we do this annually, right? We're out there once a year. We're out there doing these inspections annually, okay? Once a year to verify that all the equipment is working, to verify that all the documentation is up to date and is on par with what we're looking for. Okay, who demonstrates financial responsibility? Not me, right? Right, the owners and operators. I work for the county. I don't got any money, so don't look at me. Right, the owners and operators of these UST systems have to be financially solvent. Okay, and what facilities are exempt from this? You guys remember it? It's the right, the feds, yeah, the federal and state facilities. Very good. All right. Not yet. We're not done yet. We got what's called recordable and reportable releases. Now, they sound very similar. They sound very similar, but there is a difference between the two. There might be a little bit of overlap between these definitions, but let's separate them. Let's check out each one individually to see what they are composed of. So let's take a look at recordable releases first. Recordable releases are going to be any unauthorized releases from that UST's primary containment that are going to do certain things that can be cleaned up within 8 hours. So already time is something to compare these two, okay? Recordable versus reportable, time is one, okay? Within 8 hours after it's been detected. So once a release has been detected, within those 8 hours, it should be cleaned up. And then the other thing, doesn't escape secondary containment, okay? So meaning that if we have a break in the primary piping, usually the piping is sloped back at an angle to go down to the tank, okay? If there's a break in that primary piping and there's a fuel leak, but the secondary containment is still intact on that piping, that fuel is going to slope back into the bottom to the lowest point in the sump, meaning that is it out in the environment? No, it's in the secondary containment, so we're still good to go. So it doesn't escape secondary containment. And doesn't increase the risk of fire or explosion, okay? That's another important key thing to keep in mind. And doesn't cause any deterioration of the secondary containment as well, okay? So meaning that the secondary containment is still intact, okay? So if that fuel was released from that broken pipe, it's going to be sitting at that sump, and that sump should be able to withstand that fuel and not begin to deteriorate or break down. And of course, we want to make sure that those records are on site. You know, if there was a release of 25 gallons, we don't want to see it in the storm drain. We don't want to see that it disappeared. When we ask for that, hello? Oh, there it is. If we ask for that manifest, we don't want to see, well, I don't know. Was there a release? I don't remember. Was there? I don't know. We need to see those records, okay, on site to make sure that they are properly documenting and properly disposing of that waste. Okay, very important. Okay, so that's a brief summary of what a recordable release looks like, and here's an example of what that would look like. So if you guys can see, I know there's a little bit of light, but if you can see, you guys will see a sheen here, and there's a sheen here. You guys see that? We'll imagine this is a waste oil tank. So we'll imagine, let's say it was fuel. Okay, there's a break in the primary piping. Okay, but the secondary containment on that piping is still intact, so that flow of fuel is going back to the tank, and we see, let's say 15, 20 gallons here in the sump. Sensors there, it's in secondary containment. It hasn't compromised the secondary containment, meaning that it's not overflowing. It's in the secondary containment. This would be an example of a recordable release. And again, the magic number there is 8 hours. Interestingly enough, if you guys look at the laws, there is no numerical quantity that you can say this is considered a reportable and this is considered a recordable. There is no numerical quantity, and that kind of throws people off because usually we're looking like, okay, if it's 25 gallons, then it's reportable. If it's 5 gallons or less, it's reportable. There's nothing like that. There's no numerical value. It's kind of on time limit, and we'll see the differences there. Sometimes when we get those reports, it can be as little as a cup of fuel that was released. What happens most commonly is people drive away with the dispenser in their car. They forget that they have a dispenser while they're filling up, and they're so busy on their iPhones, right? They just drive off, and there's a fuel release, and they'll clean it up. They'll put the spill kit on there, and they'll clean up the spill, and they'll report it to us, and we'll go out there and we'll verify to make sure. I'll go out there and I'll ask questions as to, where is what happened. Let me know what happened. Where did you put the waste? What happened to the fuel that spilled out? And in many cases, it can be as little as a cup. It can be as large as you can imagine, 25, 55 gallons of a release as well. So there's no numerical number there. Recordable releases, okay? Again, for the records, what we're verifying, what we're looking for when we're out there, is to make sure that we have the types, the quantities, concentrations of that hazardous substance that was released. What was released? How much was released? When was it released? Okay, we want the dates, the times. We want as much information as possible. We want the description of the actions that were taken to control and basically clean up the release. What was done? Well, I just kind of looked at it, and it kind of, we're hoping it evaporates after a month. No, we want to make sure that, if there is a release, they pump up that fuel, they place it in a hazardous waste drum, and they manifest it off if, needed at the time. we want the method and location of disposal of the released hazardous substance. So again, if there's a manifest for that waste, if they say, well, yeah, there was 25 gallons and we pumped it out and we shipped it out. All right, that's awesome, fantastic. Can I see the manifest? Oh, they didn't leave us one. Well, no, they should have left you one. That's a big red flag for us, right? What's going on here? So we want to make sure if it was hauled off, it's hauled off properly, okay? And that means being hauled off by a registered hazardous waste hauler and having a manifest on site for us to review. And we want to see a description of the actions taken to repair that UST. You know, like I said, I'll go back to the example of a break in that primary piping. If it was a break in that primary piping, are they pulling a permit to replace or repair that portion of the pipe that broke? Okay, so we want to see a description of actions to prevent these future releases. And we want to see a description of the method used to reactivate secondary monitoring system there as well. So if a sensor is not working properly, we want to see it, again, retested and properly functioning. So that's recordable. Okay, so reportable is similar in that we have an unauthorized release. It's escaping secondary containment. We have, again, fire risks or hazards. But here we're talking about causing the deterioration of the secondary containment system. So basically what's going on here is that the fuel, let's say that same example, is, for whatever reason, let's say, is corroding the primary and the secondary component of that tank system itself. So now we're seeing a release of fuel into the environment itself. Okay, it could be underneath the soil where the tank is buried, or let's say if we have a fuel drop, okay, and the person didn't heed the warning to the 90% overfill, okay, and we have he's listening on he's listening to music and he's jamming out, and you've got a huge overfill and we're flowing over into the street, into the stormwater, then we're going to see a reportable release, definitely. And here the magic number is 24 hours, okay? The owner or operator should let us know what's going on, or I should say should clean up that spill within 24 hours after the release has been detected, or should have been detected, as opposed to the 8 hours with the recordable release. Again, very similar in a lot of respects. There is no numerical quantity. Again, you'll notice that. It's all about time. It's all about, does it increase the risk of hazards? Does it increase the risk of fires? Am I dealing with the release to primary? Okay, is the release directly to the environment? Okay, that will kind of kick it more to reportable. And there's a lot of what ifs. What if certain things happen? We can kind of play around with those scenarios. But in the general sense, and I'll show you an example of what a reportable release would look like as well. We want to see that the operator or owner investigate the conditions and take immediate measures to stop the release. So like I said, if it's an overfill problem where the fuel drop is continuing, okay, and nobody has stopped that fuel drop and you're seeing an overflow into the street, into the stormwater, did they stop that flow of fuel? If there is a substantial amount of fuel in that sump now because of that overfill, we're going to need that fuel to be pumped out, okay? And again, be manifested properly and shipped off properly, so as to prevent any further releases into the environment. So here's an example of a reportable release. The main difference here is, again, you have your tank. This is being pulled out of the ground, and you can see liquid being kind of drained into the soil, directly into the soil itself. This is a good example of what a reportable release would look like, because we talked about it escaping secondary containment, right? Deterioration of the secondary containment. So would this qualify as deterioration of secondary containment? Well, a little bit, right? Just a little bit. So this is just an example of what a reportable release would look like. But you can see there's a lot of similarities between the two. They share many similarities, but time is one of the things that distinguish them. That, and of course, the release into the environment. So with a reportable release, we're talking about 5 working days that the owner-operator has to submit a report to us that includes certain information. So within 5 days of that release, of detecting that release, we want to see that the facility is taking the steps to ensure that they are properly cleaning up the spill, that they're not just, I'll get to it when I get to it, or I'll get to it next week. We don't want to see that. We want to see that these facilities are on top of the ball, that they are trying to comply with the laws and regulations. So we're looking for certain things. We're looking for the types, the quantities, the concentrations of these hazardous substances that are released. Okay, what was released, how much was released, and when approximately was it released? Give me the approximate date, and also the date where it was discovered, because many times the date when the release happened is not necessarily the date when it was discovered. Okay, it might be a few days after. If it's a very small leak, we sometimes see that in the under dispenser containment units for the when they pull the pumps out to fuel their cars underneath them. There might be a little bit of a leak, especially with diesel, and what happens is the little drip leak will take time for the sensor to go off, or for anybody to notice. So when do you think the leak was discovered versus the approximate date of the release? Those are two different things. And of course, the date on which the leak was stopped. We don't want to get a report that says, well, we got everything else, and what about the leak? Was it stopped? No, not yet. Or we're working on it. No, we need that stopped, almost immediately. We also want to see the description of the actions taken to control or stop the release. Okay. We want to see a description of the remedial actions. Okay, what's needing to be done here? Do they need to take soil samples? Do they need to manifest the waste off? What's happening here? We want to see the methods of cleanup, the implemented to the approximate date, the cleanup actions, and a time schedule to clean up those proposed actions. So, like I said, if it's a release into the environment, let's say it's going into the stormwater or it went into the soil, let's say, what are they doing to clean up that release? We also want to see the methods and disposal location of that released substance, and if there's any contamination of that soil or groundwater or surface water, we want to see those remedial actions be taken effect as well. Okay, so we want to make sure that these guys are doing something to ensure that they're going to stop, to mitigate, and to properly control the release of that substance. And if like I said, that example with that primary versus secondary containment, if there's a break in the pipe, if there's a break in the integrity of the tank itself, what methods do they propose to repair or replace the primary or secondary containment units? And of course, any additional actions that are needed to prevent further releases. Now, they don't have to submit, everything in great detail those first 5 days, because it's a lot of information that we're going through, and they might not know the exact cause, for example, within those first 5 days. But we do want to see them hit a lot of these bullet points and have things, in process. We don't want to see, maybe one or two things and everything else has not been addressed. We want to see a good working plan of these facilities if there's this type of release. So what does that form look like? Okay, here's an example of what that form looks like. Reportable release gives us all the vital information that I just mentioned, but in a much more user-friendly way, right? Rather than just listing it all out, everything is kind of already, the hard stuff's already done. They just have to fill out the boxes, essentially. And it goes through everything that we talked about previously, the amounts, the quantities, the types, what's being done, the remedial actions, and any plans that they have to prevent any further releases. And for a close-up look of this and more detailed information on recordable versus reportable, there's that link again at the bottom that you can just click on it if you want the presentation, and it'll take you right to the site to get you more information on recordable versus reportable. All right, so again, pop quiz. So unauthorized release into the UST secondary containment is recordable or reportable, or is it the same? Or let's take a break. Yeah, recordable. Very good. You guys are awesome. Reportable releases must notify the local agency within what time frame, meaning that they have to submit a report within what time frame. We said, yeah, exactly. Yeah, 24 hours for the yeah, you guys are right. Within the 24 hours, and then the report within 5 days. Very good. You guys are on top. Awesome. So real quick, monitoring and response plan, and then we'll have a little break. So monitoring and response plan, this is kind of cool because this is the paperwork that we go through as well. we go through this paperwork as well. This is part of our annual compliance inspection. Before we approve a response plan or monitoring plan, we get it submitted to us or sent to us, and we review it, and we compare it with what we have in our database. And a lot of times, none of these come in correctly, right? A lot of times it's a double wall, fiberglass, and it's single wall steel, and you're like, what? I've never seen a single wall steel. It's a double wall fiberglass, and they got single wall piping. When you go out there on site, they got annulars. It doesn't make sense. We'll talk more about those things later on, but this is kind of what we see. So we do the corrections there, and then we sign off on it as well. So if my signature's on there, I got to make sure that my site at least my sites are good and in compliance. So what I'll do is I'll keep it with me or approve it with conditions that it's got to be verified upon field verification. So once I go out there, do my inspection, I basically verify whatever they listed on the monitoring plan and response plan and ensure that that's what is actually on site. And we'll go through the entire process of what that looks like. So before implementing any of this program, again, they're going to demonstrate to the local agency that program is in fact effective in detecting these unauthorized releases from that primary containment before it can escape that leak detection equipment. All that is part of the monitoring plan. And we approve that plan. And we want to make sure that there's certain information on that plan at a minimum. Meaning that we want the frequency of the monitoring being performed, if it's daily, monthly, weekly, annually, whatever it might be. The methods and equipment used, so they're going to list all the different types of sensors that are being used in that UST system. They're going to give us model numbers and allow us to track it in that respect. Locations where the monitoring will be performed. We want to see where the address is, where the location is for this testing, and the name and title of the people responsible. Again, we always want someone that's accountable in case there's an emergency, in case something's not right. Who do I call? Many times the attendant that's on site doesn't really know what's going on in terms of what's actually monitoring that UST system. They don't know the names of the sensors, so we need someone that's responsible that we can get in contact with. If not, we're playing phone tag for days on ends, and that just drives me crazy. I can't deal with that because I got a ton of other reports that I got to process, so I can't call them up for little things like this. So I want a name and title on there that I can contact and call pretty quick. And then the reporting format, and I'll show you guys what the form looks like in a second. So let's talk about the monitoring plan, and then we'll talk about the response plan. So the monitoring plan, it's a preventative maintenance schedule for that monitoring equipment. So all that equipment that's on that UST site has to be in compliance and in accordance with the manufacturer's written instructions. So all those sensors that they place, they've got to be placed per the manufacturer's instructions and guidelines. And we need a little description of the training that's necessary in regards to the operation of the tank system and the monitoring equipment itself. So what's that look like? So this is the form that the state uses. And you guys can see the information kind of boils down to the facility information, okay? The name, the address, the location of that gas station, the equipment that's being tested, the tank itself. What does that look like? Is it a double wall tank? Is it a single wall tank? Is it hydrostatically monitored? How is that tank monitored? Same thing with piping. Is it single wall piping? Is it double wall piping? Is there an annular space? What's being monitored in that annular space? The leak detection equipment, okay, is it a mechanical line leak detector? Is it electronic line leak detector? And we'll talk about all those sensors later on. I'm just giving you guys examples kind of early on. And then the frequency of the testing. How often is it done? Is it a site that has to do its secondary containment testing every 3 years? Is it something that's VPH, VPH site where they don't have to do that? They're exempt from it. So we verify that as well on the second form here. The under dispenser containment units, are they single wall? Are they double wall? Are they hydrostatically monitored? We need to see that as well. And again, the person that's responsible at the very bottom is the one that signs. The state forms have 3 pages to them, so this is 1, 2, and the third page is going to have the signature for the local agency. In San Diego, because we're cool like that, we kind of modified this, and we kind of put a little box up here to save paper. See, we're environmentally conscious. And we kind of sign off on the top here. So we write the date, and we either verify it or verify with conditions or reject it, and then we can sign off on it in the upper right corner. Same thing goes with the response plan. We kind of modified the form a little bit. But it's the same format overall. It's just a signature page. We just eliminated that and added it to the second page. So response plan. Again, any unauthorized releases is going to be required to be submitted to us prior to that UST system being operational. So this document is going to be sent to us, and we're going to see a copy of that on site. So again, we verify our copies. We want to make sure if there's corrections that need to be made, we make those corrections and then sign off on them. And we want to make sure that the plan is current with their operating procedures. And if there's any equipment that's specified for cleanup, that equipment is on site. So many times you'll see on the response plan, here we go. So this is what the response plan looks like. Basically what's going on here, the spill control cleanup methods, and basically the cleanup equipment. So what we see sometimes is that they put like a spill kit here, the kitty litter, if there's a spill or release. And when we go on site, guess what happens? We look for it, it's not there. Or I ask we'll ask employees like, so can you explain to me what happens if there's a spill? And you get this blank look and like, you mean like a soda spill? No, if there's a gas spill, what do you guys do? I don't know. Well, that tells you two things. Well, that the DO is not doing their job, and or that employee is really spaced out, and that their plan is not implemented because nobody went over it with them, right? So we want to verify that that information is correct, it's current, it's accurate. And again, who are the responsible persons? Who do we call up and say, you know what, this plan is totally not working. You have to have the spill equipment on site, and it's not on site. What's going on here? And their signature here, and there's a third page here's the form here. The signature here for the local agency. So we verify. You guys can see the boxes there: approved, approved with conditions, and disapproved. So what we usually do is we'll check off approved with conditions, and then we'll write down we'll verify upon field inspection. So once we go on the field, we have our form, we compare it with theirs, and then if there needs to be corrections, we correct them. Which many times it ends up being that way because a lot of owners, operators try to do their own work, or their DOs aren't really good, and they just get everything wrong. I should be a DO. I should get paid for that. But I can't. Conflict of interest. Okay, pop quiz. Let's see how you guys did. Well, don't look at that. Okay, look at it again. Which item is not required on the monitoring plan? Frequency of the monitoring plan being performed, name of the testing company, the reporting format, or the description of the training. Yeah, exactly. The name of the company. We don't verify who does the actual testing. In terms of the monitoring plan.